Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, November 15th, 2024, and you're listening to Alex's News. The temperature in Riverside today will reach a cool 60.1 degrees, with a low of 53.4. Coming up, how a simple pager disruption led to escalating tensions in the Middle East, what's behind the University of California's difficult decisions regarding student tuition, and why scientists are reconsidering their theories about the formation of the moon's far side. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. We begin tonight with a complex story of espionage and conflict in the Middle East. Joining us to break down these developments is our international correspondent Ethan Parker. Ethan, tell us about this unprecedented attack involving everyday communication devices.
Thanks, Grace. According to reports from the New Arab and BBC News, this past September, Israel executed what can only be described as an ingenious but devastating attack in Lebanon, where thousands of pagers and hundreds of walkie-talkies simultaneously exploded, resulting in 37 deaths, including 2 children, and over 3,000 injuries.
And Israel has taken responsibility for this attack?
Yes, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly admitted to ordering these attacks. What's particularly interesting is that while these devices were primarily used by Hezbollah personnel, Iran's ambassador to Lebanon, Mujtaba Amani, who was himself injured in the attacks, insisted they were for civilian use.
Can you explain the complexity of how these devices made their way into Lebanon?
According to NPR's investigation, it involved a sophisticated international supply chain. The Frontier Group entity, operating outside Taiwan, manufactured and traded the pagers. These were then handled by a Hungarian company called BAC Consulting Kft., which served as a trading intermediary. The pagers themselves carried the trademark of Gold Apollo, a Taiwanese company, though Taiwan has concluded its investigation after finding no involvement from their citizens or companies.
How did this incident affect the broader regional conflict?
This attack proved to be a crucial turning point. Just days later, on September 23, 2024, Israel launched a major aerial offensive against Lebanon, effectively escalating what had been year-long clashes with Hezbollah into full-scale war. Then, in a significant development 5 days later, Hezbollah's longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an Israeli airstrike.
What's the current humanitarian situation in Lebanon?
The situation is dire, Grace. Lebanese officials report over 2,500 deaths, and more than 1 million people have been displaced. While Iran continues to support Hezbollah, the United States is actively working to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ethan. We'll continue to follow this developing story. We turn now to a developing story about financial challenges facing California's largest public university system. Joining us to discuss this is our education correspondent, Chloe Martinez. Chloe, what can you tell us about this situation?
Thanks, Grace. According to extensive reporting from Cal Matters, the University of California system is grappling with what officials are calling a severe financial crisis, projecting a budget shortfall of more than $500 million for the upcoming 2024-25 academic year.
That's a substantial deficit. Can you break down what this means for the UNC system's overall budget?
Well, Grace, while the USC system has a total operating revenue of about $53 billion, only $11 billion is dedicated to its core educational mission. The majority actually goes to medical services. What's particularly concerning, according to LAist, is that the state might defer a $228 million base increase and a $31 million augmentation, further straining the system's finances.
How are UC officials planning to address this shortfall?
The UEC regents have approved a significant tuition increase, but it's specifically targeting new non-resident undergraduate students. Starting in fall 2025, That's in 345 days. These students will see a $3,402 increase, bringing their total mandatory tuition to $52,536, not including campus fees. This is expected to generate about $41 million annually.
Those are substantial numbers. How does this affect the cost difference between in-state and out-of-state students?
The disparity is quite striking, Grace. Non-resident students will face an average net cost of $67,000 per year, while California residents from high-income households pay around $37,000. That creates a difference of approximately $35,394 between in-state and out-of-state students.
Beyond these immediate financial challenges, what other issues is the UC system facing?
The infrastructure needs are staggering. The system requires about $53 billion for construction needs, with plans to spend $30 billion by 2030. There's also a critical need for seismic retrofitting, estimated at $16 billion, but only 16% of that is currently funded. Plus, they're aiming to add 14,000 new student beds by 2030, costing about $6.9 billion.
How has this decision been received by UC leadership?
It's been quite divisive, Grace. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis and Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas abstained from voting, while Student Regent Josiah Beharry supported the measure. The UEC Student Association has voiced strong opposition, citing concerns about accessibility for future students.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Chloe. We'll continue to follow this developing story. Here are some other headlines. The Onion has acquired Alex Jones' InfoWars at a bankruptcy auction. Backed by Sandy Hook victims' families, the satirical news outlet plans to use the platform to counter conspiracy theories. With gun violence prevention organization Everytown for Gun Safety as their launch advertiser. In New Zealand, lawmakers staged a protest during a heated parliamentary debate on race relations, leading to 2 ejections and a suspended vote. Thousands are expected to gather in Wellington next Tuesday for what could be one of the largest race-related protests in recent times. Growing frustration over fossil fuel influence at UN climate talks has led to calls for reform. At least 1,773 fossil fuel lobbyists are present at COP29 in Azerbaijan, outnumbering delegates from the 10 most climate-vulnerable nations combined. Rudy Giuliani's lawyers have filed to withdraw from representing him in his $148 million defamation case, citing a fundamental disagreement. This comes as Giuliani faces pressure to surrender assets, including a Mercedes once owned by Lauren Bacall, to satisfy the judgment awarded to 2 Georgia election workers. And in sports, Netflix is preparing to stream its first major boxing event, Mike Tyson vs. Jake Paul, at AT&T Stadium. The bout will serve as a test of the streaming platform's ability to handle live sports, with potential NFL and WWE deals on the horizon. The event will feature 8 two-minute rounds, and includes an undercard featuring Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano. We turn now to a fascinating discovery about Earth's closest celestial neighbor. Joining us to discuss new findings about volcanic activity on the far side of the moon is our science correspondent Ethan Parker. Ethan, what can you tell us about this breakthrough?
Thanks, Grace. According to the Associated Press, scientists have made a remarkable discovery that confirms ancient volcanic activity on the moon's far side, the hemisphere we can't see from Earth. This finding comes from analyzing samples returned by China's Chang'e 6 mission, which completed its sample return mission just 5 months ago in June 2024.
What specifically did these samples reveal about the moon's volcanic history?
Well, Grace, the research, which was just published in Nature and Science, identified 2 distinct age groups of volcanic rocks. One group dates back about 2.8 billion years, while another fragment is significantly older, approximately 4.2 billion years old. This tells us that volcanic activity on the far side of the moon persisted for more than 1 billion years.
That's fascinating. How does this compare to what we know about the side of the moon we can see from Earth?
That's actually one of the most interesting aspects of this discovery. The near side of the moon, which we're all familiar with, has these distinctive dark plains that were carved out by ancient lava flows. But the far side looks quite different. It has many more craters and fewer of these plains. According to study co-author Kui Li from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, scientists still aren't sure why these two sides develop so differently.
And how did researchers manage to collect samples from the far side? That seems like quite a challenge.
Indeed it was. This breakthrough builds on China's previous achievements in lunar exploration. Their Chang'e 4 mission made history in 2019 as the first spacecraft to land on the Moon's far side, specifically in the von Karman crater. The recent Chang'e 6 mission then followed up by successfully returning samples from this previously unexplored region.
Thank you for breaking this down for us, Ethan. Fascinating report about our lunar neighbor.
Thank you, Grace.
That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.